I'm Cassandra, just call me Cassie. I'm 34, and just the other Tuesday my whole world kind of flipped on its head. Picture this. One ordinary evening I'm holding a lottery ticket and boom. Those 6 little numbers just made me a multimillionaire. My hands were shaking, and honestly I was buzzing with this crazy mix of excitement and, yeah, a bit of panic. And right then I made a call. I wasn't gonna spill the beans to anyone. Why? Because in my world money doesn't just bring comfort. It can bring out all the wolves. And let me tell you, what happened next was a wild ride through real-deal human emotions. Joy, nerves, and some tough truths. So, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? Ever had a moment that turned your life upside down? Drop a comment and let me know. Stick around because this story's got some twists that'll keep you hooked till the very end. So, here is a little about me before everything went sideways. My name is Cassandra Wilson, but everyone calls me Cassie. I am 34 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon. Not the postcard version you see online, but the real one. Gray skies most days, coffee shops on every corner, and people constantly rushing somewhere with headphones in and thoughts elsewhere. I am an accountant at a small marketing firm. Not a glamorous job, not a nightmare either. Just one of those steady sit at your desk, stare at screens all day kind of roles. I earn enough to survive, not enough to breathe easy. Rent gets paid. Bills get covered. Savings, well, savings always felt like something meant for other people. My apartment is a 1-bedroom on the edge of the city. Nothing fancy. Thin walls. A view of a parking lot. But it is mine. That mattered to me more than I ever admitted out loud. Independence, even when it is tight, still feels better than asking for help that comes with strings attached. Most mornings start the same way. Alarm at 6. Coffee strong enough to wake the dead. A quick scroll through emails before my feet even hit the floor. Deadlines, numbers, reminders of what still needs to be done. Life on repeat. Safe, predictable, and quietly exhausting. And here is the thing that makes this story matter. From the outside, my life looked fine. Normal. Stable. I was the responsible one. The reliable one. The person people called when they needed help, advice, or money. I had spent years being that person. Saying yes. Holding things together. Swallowing frustration and telling myself that this was just how adulthood worked. What people did not see was the pressure behind it. The constant mental math. The silent stress. The way one unexpected expense could knock everything off balance. The way I learned to smile through it and say, I am good. Even when I was barely keeping it together. That is why what happened next mattered so much. This story is not about suddenly becoming rich. It is about what money reveals when it enters a life that has always been about restraint, responsibility, and quiet sacrifice. It is about identity, about realizing who you are when the rules change overnight. And trust me, when they did change for me, I started seeing everything and everyone very differently. Before everything changed, my life ran on autopilot. Weekdays looked almost identical. Alarm at 6. Snooze once, sometimes twice. I would roll out of bed, shuffle to the kitchen, and start the coffee before my brain even caught up. Mornings were quiet, almost numb. Just me, the hum of the machine, and the weight of another long day settling in. By 7:30 I was out the door. Same route. Same traffic. Same podcast playing in the background while I mentally prepared myself for spreadsheets, deadlines, and pretending I was not already tired. At work I kept my head down. Numbers made sense to me. People not so much. I did my job well, stayed late when needed, and rarely complained. Being dependable had become my brand. But the pressure never really switched off. Every paycheck already had a destination before it landed. Rent, utilities, student loans, credit card balances that never seemed to shrink, no matter how careful I was. I tracked every dollar like it mattered because it did. One flat tire, one medical bill, one unexpected expense, and the whole thing could wobble. I was constantly doing mental math. Standing in grocery aisles comparing prices. Saying no to plans, then blaming work so I would not have to explain. When friends talked about trips or spontaneous weekends away, I smiled and nodded, pretending it did not sting. At home, evenings were quiet. Too quiet sometimes. I would kick off my shoes, heat up something simple, and sink into the couch with my laptop balanced on my knees. Emails, bills, lists of things I needed to handle next. Life felt manageable, but only if nothing went wrong. Emotionally, I lived somewhere in the middle. I was not unhappy, but I was not free either. I carried this low-level tension all the time, like background noise you get so used to that you forget it is there. I told myself this was adulthood. This was normal. Everyone was tired. Everyone was stretched. Right? There were moments of joy, sure. Coffee with a friend. A good laugh at work. The satisfaction of paying something off, even if it was small. But those moments were always brief. Always followed by the reminder that tomorrow would look exactly the same. And then there was the role I played in everyone else's life. I was the steady one. The fixer. The one people leaned on. If someone needed help, advice, or a small loan, they called me. I rarely said no. Part of me wanted to be needed. Another part was afraid of what would happen if I stopped being useful. So I kept going. Day after day. Calm on the surface. Tired underneath. That was my emotional baseline before the turning point. Controlled. Responsible. Quietly overwhelmed but functional. I did not expect miracles. I did not dream big. I just wanted stability. Space to breathe. A little less fear about what might go wrong next. I had no idea that one ordinary moment would shatter that routine completely. And once it did, there was no going back to the life I thought I understood. To understand why silence mattered so much, you need to understand my family. Not just who they are, but how they move through the world. And through my life. First, there is my mother, Diane. She is the kind of woman who looks put together no matter what. Perfect hair. Polite smile. Always saying the right thing in public. Her defining trait is control. She likes order. Appearances. The idea of being a good mother more than the work of actually being one. Growing up, love often came with conditions. Help came with reminders. And nothing was ever free. Then there is my stepfather, Warren. Wealthy. Quiet. Calculated. His defining trait is power. He measures people by usefulness. Conversations with him feel transactional, even when money is not being discussed. I learned early that in his world, affection is earned, not given. My father, Gregory, is different but not easier. He is a high school physics teacher. Logical. Analytical. His defining trait is judgment disguised as wisdom. Every conversation turns into a lesson. Every mistake becomes a lecture. Support rarely comes without criticism attached. He believes struggle builds character, even when the struggle is unnecessary. My stepmother, Stephanie, mirrors that energy. Image-focused. Status-aware. Her defining trait is comparison. She always knows who is doing better, who is falling behind, and who should be embarrassed about it. Subtle comments. Side glances. Nothing overt, but always sharp enough to land. Then there is my younger sister, Lisa. She is 30, and she has always been the golden one. Ivy League education. Successful husband. Beautiful kids. Picture-perfect life. Her defining trait is entitlement wrapped in charm. She never asks outright. She hints. She expects. And somehow, things always work out for her. My older brother, Jason, sits on the opposite end of the spectrum. 36. Charismatic. Unstable. His defining trait is chaos. He drifts between jobs and relationships, always one step away from a breakthrough that never quite arrives. When trouble hits, he calls, apologizes, promises change, then disappears until the next crisis. On my mother's side, there is Aunt Martha. She is the quiet exception. A public school teacher. Modest apartment. Old car that rattles when it starts. Her defining trait is kindness without expectation. She shows up. She listens. She gives what she can even when she has very little. No drama. No scoreboard. On my father's side, there is Aunt Heather. Married into money. Loves reminding everyone of it. Her defining trait is superiority. Holidays with her feel like auditions. Comments about careers, homes, and life choices always slide in casually, but they stick. Her son, Ryan, takes after her confidence without her stability. His defining trait is avoidance. Big talk. Big plans. Very little follow-through. And then there is me. In this family, my role has always been the reliable one. The helper. The one who keeps things moving. I am the person people call when they need advice, money, or emotional backup. I fix things. I smooth things over. I absorb tension so others do not have to. No one ever asked if I was tired. No one noticed how often I said yes at my own expense. In this system, everyone had a role and mine was clear. Support, not spotlight. Stability, not softness. Giving, not asking. That dynamic worked until it did not. Because once money entered the picture, even silently, those roles started to feel dangerous. And I realized something that made my chest tighten. If I told the truth too soon, I would not just be changing my life. I would be stepping straight into a family dynamic that had never learned how to handle power without taking advantage of it. And that realization stayed with me, long before anyone knew a single thing. Silence did not come from nowhere. It was built slowly from moments I never fully forgot. The first crack showed years ago with my brother Jason. He called me late one night, voice shaking, swearing he had hit rock bottom. He needed help, he said. Rehab. A fresh start. He promised this time was different. Real talk, he sounded scared enough that I believed him. I drained most of my savings and sent him the money without hesitation. No paperwork. No conditions. Just trust. Weeks passed. Then months. When I finally checked in, his phone went unanswered. Later, I found out he never even checked into the program. The money was gone. So was the apology. That was the first time I felt that hollow mix of anger and shame for believing again. Then there was my sister Lisa. Her wedding was supposed to be perfect. She said she was short on funds because costs had unexpectedly piled up. She promised she would pay me back right after the honeymoon. I put the charge on my credit card, telling myself family helps family. Years went by. The balance stayed. Every time I brought it up, she laughed it off or changed the subject. New car. New house upgrades. Designer strollers. Somehow repayment never made the list. Low-key, it hurt more than I admitted. Not because of the money, but because my trust clearly ranked below her comfort. The third moment cut deeper than the rest. My father called after a storm damaged his roof. He sounded stressed, older somehow. I wired him what I could spare, knowing it meant tightening my own budget even more. A few weeks later, I was scrolling online and saw photos of him and my stepmother lounging on a beach in Mexico, drinks in hand, smiling like nothing in the world weighed on them. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. No explanation followed. No acknowledgement. Just silence. That was when something inside me shifted. Each incident alone might have been forgivable. People mess up. Life gets messy. But together they formed a pattern I could not ignore. In my family, generosity traveled in one direction. I gave. They took. And when the roles reversed, excuses appeared fast. Tight budgets. Bad timing. Moral lectures about responsibility. Somehow there was always a reason why helping me was impossible, but accepting help from me felt completely natural. Over time, I learned to swallow disappointment and keep going. I told myself this was just how families worked. Someone always carried more weight. Someone always filled the gaps. And that someone was me. But those memories came rushing back the night I held that winning ticket. I did not imagine chaos. I remembered it. I remembered how quickly loyalty blurred when money entered the picture. How promises dissolved. How easily people justified their choices when they believed they deserved more than they gave. So when the thought crossed my mind to call someone, anyone, it stopped just as fast. Because silence suddenly felt safer than honesty. Silence meant control. It meant time. It meant I could breathe without expectations crashing down on me. And for the first time, I asked myself a question I had avoided for years. What would happen if I needed them the way they had needed me? That question sat heavy in my chest. And deep down, I already knew the answer. Those past betrayals did not just hurt. They taught me something. They showed me that trust, once broken enough times, does not come back easily. And in that moment, with millions on the line, I realized silence was not secrecy. It was self-preservation. That ticket was never part of some big plan. I did not wake up that day thinking my life was about to change. It was just another long, draining afternoon. Work had been relentless. Emails stacking up. Deadlines creeping closer. One of those days where your shoulders stay tense even after you clock out. On my way home, I stopped at the corner store near my apartment. The same one I had been stopping at for years. Fluorescent lights. A tired cashier. The hum of refrigerators in the background. I went in for milk and something sweet, nothing more. While waiting in line, my eyes drifted to the lottery display. Bright colors. Big promises. Normally, I barely noticed it. But that day, something inside me felt worn down enough to pause. Low-key, I was exhausted. Not just tired from work, but tired of being careful all the time. Tired of doing everything right and still feeling one step away from trouble. Tired of carrying responsibility without any real safety net underneath. Buying a ticket felt harmless. Almost silly. A small moment of hope wrapped in logic I did not fully believe in. I told myself it was no big deal. Just a few dollars. Just a habit I picked up now and then when life felt heavy. I handed over the cash without thinking too hard. The ticket printed. I folded it neatly and slipped it into my bag, already forgetting about it as I walked out. There was no rush of excitement. No fantasies about yachts or mansions. Honestly, my expectations were close to zero. For me, that ticket was never about becoming rich. It was about relief. About imagining a version of life where one unexpected bill would not knock me flat. Where saying yes did not always come at a personal cost. Where stability did not feel so fragile. That night, I tossed the ticket onto my kitchen counter and went on with my evening. Dinner. Emails. The usual routine. The kind of night that blends into every other one. I did not know it then, but that quiet, almost forgettable decision was the first crack in the life I thought was fixed in place. And once that crack formed, nothing stayed the same again. I did not rush to check the numbers. That part still surprises me. The ticket sat on my kitchen counter all day, half covered by mail and a grocery receipt. I walked past it more than once, telling myself I would check it later. There was no urgency, no gut feeling. Just another normal evening unfolding exactly the way it always did. Dinner was simple. I barely tasted it. The TV played in the background while I scrolled on my phone, answering messages, zoning out. Life felt ordinary in that quiet, familiar way. Eventually, almost absent-mindedly, I picked up the ticket. I remember standing there under the warm kitchen light, barefoot on cold tile, unfolding the paper slowly. The drawing had already aired. I pulled up the numbers on my phone, still expecting nothing. That tiny shrug you do when you already assume the answer. The first number matched. I frowned. Checked again. Then the second. My stomach tightened. By the third number, my heart started pounding hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. I stopped breathing without realizing it. My fingers were suddenly clumsy, like they did not belong to me anymore. Fourth number. Match. I whispered, "No way," to an empty room. Fifth number. Match. My hands began shaking so badly I had to sit down. The room felt smaller. Too quiet. My ears rang like I had stood up too fast. Then I saw the sixth number. That was the moment my body reacted before my mind could catch up. My chest felt tight. My palms went cold. I stared at the ticket, then at my phone, then back again over and over like one of them would suddenly prove me wrong. This had to be a mistake. I refreshed the page, checked the date, rechecked the ticket, counted the numbers again. I even turned the ticket upside down like that would somehow change reality. It did not. My legs gave out and I sank onto the kitchen chair, gripping the edge of the table. I laughed once, sharp and breathless, then immediately covered my mouth like I had said something dangerous out loud. I was smiling and terrified at the same time. I pulled up the official lottery website, hands trembling as I typed. There it was, clear as day. The numbers. The prize amount. One winner. Me. The confirmation screen loaded slowly, and with every second my pulse climbed higher. When the page finally settled, there was no doubt left to hide behind. I had won millions. A rush of heat flooded my face. Tears stung my eyes without warning. I felt dizzy like the floor had tilted slightly under my feet. This huge, unreal wave of happiness crashed into me all at once. Relief. Disbelief. A kind of joy so intense it almost hurt. For a few seconds I let myself feel it. I imagined the weight lifting, the constant stress loosening its grip, the idea of breathing without calculating every decision. It felt unreal, like stepping into someone else's life for a moment. Then something else crept in. Fear. Not fear of losing the ticket. Not fear of making a mistake. Fear of what this knowledge could do once it left my hands. Once it entered conversations. Once it reached the wrong ears. That fear landed fast and heavy, cutting straight through the excitement. I looked around my apartment, suddenly hyper-aware of how quiet it was. No witnesses. No applause. Just me and this secret that already felt too big to hold. I folded the ticket carefully, slower this time like it was fragile. I placed it in a drawer and closed it, my hand lingering on the handle longer than necessary. That was when it hit me. This moment was real. The money was real. And from this second on, every choice I made mattered more than ever. Because the win was confirmed. But what came next would decide everything. Sleep did not happen that night. Not even close. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing in circles. Every time I closed my eyes, the numbers flashed back at me. The ticket. The confirmation screen. The word winner echoing in my head like it did not belong to me. At some point, fear pushed me out of bed. I grabbed my laptop and sat at the kitchen table. The same spot where everything had unraveled hours earlier. I told myself I just wanted information. Nothing dramatic. Just facts. But the deeper I went, the heavier my chest felt. Story after story pulled me in. Lottery winners losing friends. Families tearing themselves apart. Lawsuits. Relatives showing up out of nowhere. Old classmates suddenly checking in. Winners who went broke within a few years. People who said the money felt like a curse disguised as luck. I clicked through articles, forums, interviews. Different countries. Different amounts. Same pattern. The common mistake appeared again and again. They told people too soon. They shared the news before they had protection plans or boundaries. And once that door opened, it never fully closed again. Expectations formed instantly. Pressure followed. Guilt became currency. I felt my stomach twist as recognition set in. This was not some distant possibility. This was my family. My history. My reality. I already knew how money shifted dynamics even in small doses. With millions involved, the fallout would not be louder. It would be quieter and more dangerous. Entitlement wrapped in concern. Manipulation disguised as love. Favors that were never really favors. I pictured conversations I had not even had yet. The way people would frame their needs. The way saying no would suddenly feel cruel even when it was necessary. That was when fear turned into clarity. Silence was not about hiding. It was about buying time. Time to think without pressure. Time to protect myself before anyone else decided what I owed them. Time to understand what this money could do before it started doing things to me. I closed my laptop just before dawn, my head aching, eyes burning. The decision settled quietly but firmly. I would not tell anyone. Not yet. Not until I had safeguards in place. Not until I knew how to stand on solid ground. That silence felt heavy, yes. Lonely even. But it also felt safe. And for the first time since checking those numbers, I finally took a deep breath. By the next morning, one thing was clear to me. I could not wing this. The money was real now, and pretending otherwise felt reckless. I needed someone who understood the rules, the risks, and the kind of mess sudden wealth could create if handled carelessly. So instead of calling a friend or a family member, I did the one thing that felt smart. I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I looked for someone who dealt specifically with estate planning and high-value assets. The kind of person who had seen this before, and would not flinch when I explained my situation. Sitting in that quiet office a few days later, clutching my bag like it held something explosive, I felt wildly out of place. The lawyer was calm. Almost too calm. Salt and pepper hair. Measured voice. The kind of presence that made you feel like chaos had already been accounted for. I slid the ticket across the desk without saying much. He barely raised an eyebrow. That alone told me I had come to the right place. He walked me through my options slowly, clearly. In my state, winners could remain anonymous if the prize was claimed through a legal structure. A trust. An entity. Something that created distance between my name and the money. He explained how taxes would work, what needed to be set up immediately, and why privacy mattered more than excitement at this stage. The biggest mistake, he said, was telling people before the foundation was solid. Once that happens, control disappears. We talked about security, digital and personal, changing routines just enough to stay safe without drawing attention, locking things down quietly, making sure my address, my accounts, and my identity were protected before anything else moved forward. It was a lot to take in, but something about the process grounded me. For the first time since the win, I felt like I was doing something instead of reacting. We set up a trust. Paperwork upon paperwork. signatures that made my hand cramp, decisions that felt oddly heavy for things that were supposed to bring freedom. But with every step, the noise in my head softened. This was not about paranoia. This was about respect. For myself. For my future. When I walked out of that office with a folder tucked under my arm, the city looked the same. Traffic. People rushing. Coffee cups in hand. No one knew what I was carrying, and that anonymity felt powerful. I still had the same job. The same apartment. The same routine. But now, beneath all of that, I had protection. And with it, a growing sense that staying silent had not just been smart. It had been necessary. The idea did not come to me all at once. It formed slowly late at night, when everything was quiet and my thoughts finally had space to breathe. I kept circling the same question. Who would be there for me if I actually needed them? Not the version of me that always said yes. Not the reliable fixer. The version of me that was vulnerable, stressed, and asking for help without anything to offer in return. I hated that I even had to wonder. But pretending the question did not exist felt worse. So I made a plan. Not something dramatic. Not a disaster. Just a situation serious enough to matter, but believable enough that no one would question it. A financial emergency. The kind people deal with every day. I would say I lost my job. The company downsized. Sudden layoffs. No warning. No safety net. Rent due. Medical bills piling up. Enough pressure to feel real because it was real for so many people I knew. And honestly, it mirrored fears I had lived with for years. I decided on one rule that mattered most. Everyone would hear the same story. Everyone would be asked for the same amount. $5,000. Not pocket change, but not life-ending either. An amount that would sting but would not ruin anyone I planned to ask. No room for confusion. No moving goalposts. Just a clean test of priorities. I told myself this was not revenge. It was clarity. I needed to see how people responded when the power dynamic shifted. When I was no longer the helper but the one asking. When there was nothing shiny to gain. No promise of return. Just trust. I rehearsed the story carefully. Not overdone. Not emotional. Calm, stressed but composed. The way a responsible person would sound when they genuinely needed help. That part mattered. I did not want pity. I wanted honesty. I wrote names down on a list. Family. One by one. The people who had leaned on me in the past. The people who claimed we were close. The people who always said, "You know you can count on me." Seeing the list on paper made my chest feel tight. I knew this plan came with risk. Feelings could get hurt. Illusions could break. But the alternative felt worse. Living with money and never knowing who was real. So I committed. Same words. Same request. Same amount. All I had to do next was start making calls. And deep down, I already sensed that the answers would change everything. I decided to start with my mother. That felt fair. Logical, even. If anyone would show concern without turning it into a transaction, it should have been her. I waited until early evening, when I knew she would be home, settled in, glass of wine nearby, TV murmuring in the background. She answered on the third ring. Her voice softened the moment she heard mine. Concern came quickly, but it felt rehearsed, like a switch she had flipped many times before. I told her the story calmly. The layoffs. The shock. How fast everything fell apart. I kept my voice steady, even when my chest tightened. I explained the bills, the rent, the gap I could not cover alone. Then I asked, $5,000. Just to get through the month. There was a pause. Not a short one. The kind that stretches and fills the space with calculation. "Oh, Cassie," she sighed. "You know I would help if I could. But Warren and I just made a big financial commitment." I waited. She kept talking. The lake house. Unexpected expenses. Timing. Always timing. Her concern slowly shifted into explanation, then justification. She suggested I talk to my father. Maybe my sister. Maybe I should tighten my budget. Maybe this was a sign to rethink my career. Not once did she say yes. Not once did she say no. When we hung up, I stared at my phone, feeling that familiar heaviness settle in. The kind that comes from being gently passed along like a responsibility no one wants to claim. Next was my father. I asked him to meet for coffee. Neutral ground. Public place. less room for dismissal. He arrived on time, ordered black coffee, and listened with that same analytical expression he always wore. I told him everything. The job loss, the stress, the numbers. He leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. Cassandra, he said, using my full name the way he always did when he was about to teach a lesson. This is exactly why I have always stressed the importance of emergency savings. I nodded. Let him speak. He talked about discipline, planning, sacrifice, how hard times build character. He asked about my spending habits, my subscriptions, my rent, whether I really needed to live where I did. I mentioned the $5,000. He sighed slowly like I had disappointed him. I would love to help, he said finally. But Stephanie and I are preparing for retirement. Touching that money would be irresponsible. Irresponsible. The word sat between us, sharp and final. He patted my hand before leaving, told me this experience would make me stronger, that I would thank him one day. I watched him walk out, feeling oddly numb. No anger. Just a quiet confirmation of something I already knew. Then came my sister Lisa. Her house looked exactly like her life. Polished. Bright. Immaculate. We sat at her kitchen island, her kids' artwork framed neatly on the walls. A high-end coffee machine humming softly beside us. She gasped when I told her. "Oh my God, Cassie, that is awful," she said, reaching for my hand. Perfect nails. Perfect concern. For a moment I almost believed it. Then I mentioned the amount. Her face shifted. Just slightly. A flicker of discomfort she tried to smooth over with a smile. "This really is not the best time," she said. "We just bought the new car, and the kids' tuition is killing us. And honestly, Paul is super strict about money." She suggested smaller help. Maybe a few hundred. Maybe I could stay with them for a while. The guest room was full of boxes, but they could make it work. I declined gently. She promised to talk to Paul and get back to me. She never did. After that came my brother, Jason. I did not even call him. I texted. Same story. Same request. I wanted to see how much effort he would make. He replied within minutes. "That sucks, sis. Things are tight right now. I will call you later." Later never came. Days passed. No call. No follow-up. When I tried reaching him, my messages went unanswered. His phone went straight to voicemail. The silence felt louder than any excuse. Then there was my stepmother, Stephanie. Her response was quick, efficient, almost cold. "I am sorry to hear that," she said, without sounding sorry at all. "But we are not in a position to help. Maybe this is a chance for you to reassess your financial decisions." I reminded her calmly that I had helped them before. She dismissed it immediately. That was different. Shared property. Shared benefit. The conversation ended fast. Finally, I heard from Ryan. He texted with enthusiasm. "Big sympathy. Big promises. Absolutely, Cass. I have got you. Let's grab lunch tomorrow. I will bring a check." For a brief second, hope flickered. The next day, an hour before we were supposed to meet, he canceled. Something came up. He suggested rescheduling. He never followed up. Never replied again. By the end of the week, my phone felt heavier in my hand. Every reaction was different, but the pattern was the same. Excuses dressed up as concern. Lectures disguised as wisdom. Offers that sounded generous but required me to shrink myself. And silence where effort would have cost nothing. I sat alone in my apartment one night, replaying conversations, feeling that old ache rise up again. 7 people. 7 chances. Not one clear yes. Not one moment where I felt genuinely held instead of managed. That was when it hit me. If this was how they responded when I had nothing to offer, then silence had already saved me from something far worse. And there was still one name left on my list. The one I was almost afraid to call. I did not call Aunt Martha right away. Part of me was afraid. Afraid of being disappointed again. Afraid of confirming that the pattern was complete. She was the last name on my list, and somehow that made it heavier than all the others combined. She called me first. Her name lit up my phone one quiet afternoon while I was sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing in particular. The moment I heard her voice, something in my chest loosened. "Cassie, sweetheart," she said softly. Your mom mentioned you lost your job. Are you holding up? That was it. No lecture. No assumptions. Just concern. I told her the same story I told everyone else. The layoffs. The stress. The bills stacking up. My voice cracked in places I did not plan for. And she noticed. She listened. Fully. No interruptions. No advice rushed in too early. Then she said, "Let's have lunch tomorrow." My treat. We met at a small diner near her apartment. Nothing fancy. Vinyl booths. Coffee that tasted like it had been brewed too long. She hugged me before we even sat down. The kind of hug that lingers just enough to say, "You are not alone." Over grilled cheese and soup, she asked practical questions. Not judgmental ones. Real ones. How was I sleeping? Had I been eating? What kind of work was I applying for? When the plates were cleared, she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. She slid it across the table toward me. "I want you to have this," she said gently. I opened it and felt my throat tighten. $3,000. I stared at it, stunned. My first instinct was to push it back. To say no. To protect her. She cut me off before I could speak. "I know it is not the full amount," she said, almost apologetic. "But it should help with rent. And if you need somewhere to stay, my sofa folds out. It is not fancy, but it is yours." My eyes burned. This was not easy money for her. I knew that. She lived carefully. Quietly. She never complained. "You do not have to pay me back right away," she added. "Just get back on your feet. That is all I want." In that moment, something broke open inside me. Not from the money, but from the way she gave it. No guilt. No conditions. No expectation of gratitude beyond the moment itself. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I did something I had not planned to do. I looked into her finances gently, carefully. What I found made my stomach drop. That $3,000 was almost everything she had saved. She had been managing her own health issues quietly. Medical costs. Rising prescriptions. Extra tutoring hours to cover the gap. And still, she gave without hesitation. The contrast hit me like a wave. The one person with the least had shown up the most. When I invited her over a few days later and told her the truth, my hands shook. I expected anger. Hurt. Disappointment. She listened quietly, then nodded. "I understand why you did it," she said. "Sometimes you need to see clearly, even when it hurts." She did not ask for anything. Not explanations. Not repayment. Not recognition. Just my honesty. And in that quiet living room, I realized something that felt both painful and freeing. Loyalty does not announce itself loudly. It shows up. I did not confront anyone in anger. That surprised even me. After everything I had seen, everything I had felt, rage would have been easy. Justified even. But anger gives people an excuse to dismiss you. Calm does not. Calm forces them to listen. So I invited everyone over one Sunday afternoon. Nothing dramatic. No announcement. Just a message saying I wanted to clear the air. My apartment felt small as they arrived one by one, filling the space with familiar energy. My mother sat stiffly on the couch. My father stood near the window, arms crossed. Lisa and her husband whispered to each other. Jason avoided eye contact. Aunt Heather scanned the room like she was judging the furniture. Aunt Martha sat quietly beside me. I took a breath before speaking. My voice was steady. That mattered. "I wanted to talk because there has been a lot of tension lately," I said. "And I do not like things being left unsaid." They shifted. Braced themselves. "I went through a difficult moment recently," I continued. "And I reached out for help. Not because I expected miracles, but because I wanted to understand something." My father frowned. "Understand what exactly?" I met his eyes calmly. Who I could count on when I had nothing to offer. Silence fell. I did not accuse. I did not raise my voice. I simply stated facts. "I was given advice," I said, glancing at him. "I was given explanations. I was told why helping me was not possible. What I was not given was support." My mother opened her mouth, then closed it again. "I am not here to shame anyone," I added. "Everyone has the right to say no. But I also have the right to notice patterns." Lisa shifted uncomfortably. Jason stared at the floor. For years, I continued, I have been the one people leaned on. Financially, emotionally, consistently. I never kept score, but I did keep showing up. I paused, letting the words land. When the roles reversed, the response was clear. Aunt Heather scoffed softly. Are you saying we owe you something? I turned to her, still calm. No. I am saying I finally see where I stand. That landed harder than shouting ever could. My father cleared his throat. We all have responsibilities, Cassandra. You cannot expect. I am not expecting anything anymore, I said gently, cutting him off. That is the point. The room grew quiet again. I am setting boundaries, I continued. That means I will no longer be the automatic solution. I will no longer say yes out of guilt or habit. I will help when I genuinely want to, not when I feel pressured. Jason finally looked up. So what does that mean for us? It means the relationship changes, I replied. Not with drama, not with distance out of spite, but with honesty. No one argued after that. They looked unsettled, exposed, because calm truth leaves no room to hide. When they left, there were no slammed doors, no dramatic goodbyes, just quiet discomfort trailing behind them. I closed the door and leaned against it, heart pounding softly. I felt lighter, not because they had apologized. They had not, but because for the first time in my life, I had spoken from self-respect instead of fear. And that changed everything. Karma did not arrive with fireworks. There was no dramatic downfall, no public humiliation, no moment where anyone suddenly realized they had been wrong and begged for forgiveness. Honestly, if I had been waiting for that, I would have been disappointed. Instead, karma showed up quietly, slowly, in ways that felt almost ordinary. After that conversation, something shifted. Not loudly, but noticeably. The calls stopped coming as often. The casual requests faded. The emotional dumping slowed to a trickle. When I was no longer the automatic safety net, people adjusted. Not because they suddenly grew stronger, but because they had no other choice. Jason struggled the most. Without someone stepping in to smooth things over, his patterns caught up with him. Missed rent. Broken promises. Burned bridges. I heard about it secondhand through family gossip. For once, no one was calling me to fix it. And for the first time, I did not rush to step in. Not out of spite. Out of respect for myself. Lisa's world did not collapse, but the shine dulled. Complaints about expenses grew louder. The pressure she used to deflect onto others stayed with her now. When she mentioned stress, I listened politely, offered words, but nothing more. And she noticed. The dynamic had changed, even if she never said it out loud. My parents carried on as they always had. Comfortable. Structured. Distant. But something was different there too. Conversations became shorter. More careful. They no longer assumed access to my time or resources. Boundaries, once invisible, had become real. And Aunt Heather? She found someone else to look down on. People like her always do. The truth is, nothing bad happened to them. And that was the point. Karma was not about punishment. It was about consequence. About reality catching up once expectations were removed. About people having to sit with the outcomes of their own choices. The biggest change was not in their lives. It was in mine. I stopped feeling responsible for outcomes that were never mine to carry. I slept better. Laughed more. Felt lighter in ways I had not expected. Without resentment, without revenge, without cruelty. Peace replaced obligation. And that, more than anything, felt like justice. The biggest changes in my life did not happen all at once. There was no dramatic exit. No flashy upgrades. No moment where everything suddenly looked different on the outside. From a distance, my life probably seemed almost the same. And that was intentional. I kept my job a little longer. Kept my routine steady. Same apartment. Same coffee shop. Same quiet evenings. The difference was internal. Subtle but powerful. For the first time, I was not living in survival mode. The constant tension I had carried for years slowly faded. I no longer flinched when an unexpected expense popped up. I no longer calculated every decision like one wrong move could undo me. That low-level anxiety, the kind you get so used to that you forget it is there, finally loosened its grip. I gave myself time. Time to think about what I actually wanted, not what was expected of me. Time to imagine a future without pressure attached to every choice. I met with advisors. I learned. I listened more than I spoke. Growth, I realized, did not come from rushing. Came from intention. Eventually I made changes. Not loud ones. Thoughtful ones. I left my job on my own terms and stepped into work that felt meaningful. Work that aligned with my values instead of draining them. I invested in stability, not status. In freedom, not appearances. I moved into a home that felt like a deep breath. Nothing extravagant. Just quiet. Light. A place where I could rest without feeling like I was always on guard. I planted things. I cooked more. I learned to enjoy stillness. My circle grew smaller but stronger. I spent more time with people who showed up without being asked. Conversations became honest. Laughter came easier. I stopped explaining myself to people who never really listened anyway. And most importantly, I stopped proving my worth through sacrifice. Purpose replaced pressure. Peace replaced performance. I began using my resources thoughtfully, supporting causes that mattered, helping quietly, without announcements or expectations, giving in ways that did not cost me my sense of self. The money changed my options, but the choices changed my life. I was no longer defined by what I could give others. I was grounded in who I had become, and that quiet, steady growth felt richer than anything I could have imagined. Looking back now, the money was never the real turning point. Silence was. Keeping that secret did not make me cold or calculating. It gave me space to see clearly, space to understand who showed up out of love, and who showed up only when it was convenient. It taught me that loyalty is not loud. It does not announce itself. It does not make speeches or excuses. It simply acts. For a long time I believed love meant sacrifice, that being good meant giving even when it hurt, that keeping the peace mattered more than protecting myself. I was wrong. What I learned is this. Real love does not drain you. Real loyalty does not put conditions on care. And real family does not disappear when you finally need something back. Money did not change the people around me. It revealed them. And more importantly, it revealed me. I learned how to choose calm over chaos, boundaries over guilt, self-respect over approval. I learned that it is not cruel to step back from people who only value you for what you provide. It is necessary. The quiet life I built after all of this is not flashy. It is not something you brag about, but it is honest. It is peaceful. And it is mine. So here is what I want to ask you. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have told the truth right away? Or would you have stayed quiet too? And have you ever been in a situation where someone showed you who they really were when it mattered most? If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. I read them. And if you know someone who gives too much, who carries more than they should, send this story their way. Sometimes the most powerful move is not revenge. It is choosing yourself.